Hey guys, it's Jack. I just wanted to talk to you today about a way that you can help support the podcast if you're not already. To support the channel is to become a Patreon member. So we have Patreon memberships that start at just $5 a month. And when you sign up, you get access to all of our episodes ad free. That's the big bonus for that. I mean, we also do some Patreon bonus episodes for our subscribers. But this is the biggest and best way that you can support the Team House channel and podcast if you'd like to. And we really appreciate that. So go and check us out at patreon.com/the Team House.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Eyes On. And I'm going to jump right to the chase. We've got Jack back on, along with the customary criminals, both Dee and Jason. Jack, welcome aboard. I'm not going to use up your star space here by blabbing. So, talk to us, man. What are your thoughts?
What, like, about life or
Yeah.
This is your arena,
What
Jack.
do you
This
think
is
about the
your
state of
show.
masculinity in the United States today?
Yeah, no, okay.
you're talking
Let's
to the
narrow.
wrong
Okay.
that's the wrong Jack Murphy. You need to go talk to the other guy that's
Yeah.
bald and he'll
All
help you
right.
out with that.
I forgot we had D on the show. Okay. Yeah. I mean, let's start with current affairs. You
Yeah.
saw Mick and Mark on recently. Events in the Middle East. That's
Yeah,
narrow
man,
enough.
I mean, all you guys have seen what's going on in the papers, and I follow it too. And um, my thought about it is that there are, yes, some like really impressive operations that the Israelis have pulled off over the last month or so. Um, Definitely did a lot of disruption of terror networks, definitely took some chess pieces off the board, and set Hezbollah back probably at least a few years. And all of that is quite impressive. But on the other hand, I also can't help but think about the war on terror and that we did that for 20 years and still lost the war. At least we lost in Afghanistan and Iraq. I mean, we protected America, thankfully, but um, that's
You mean
that's kind of
when the
that's kind of the
dust when
yeah,
the
that's the
dust settles?
conundrum. Yeah, if you don't
When
have a
the dust settles, the
political
problem remains.
yeah, if you don't have a political solution that you're aiming towards, that there has to be a political resolution to the conflict, then I mean, you can keep killing people all day, every day. And the Israelis have experienced this too. I'm not telling them anything they don't already know. They've been down this road many times, and I mean, maybe it sounds crass, but I mean, maybe it really is just a delaying strategy. And like, we're trying to delay this a few more years until hopefully a political resolution presents itself. Because otherwise, it doesn't seem like they really have like a long-term strategy here. And I'd hear all of these people kind of talking out their ass about how like Hezbollah is finished, they're done, this is over. Like, no, no, no. This is not over. This is the beginning, not the end.
Yeah, it's it. The taken individually. I mean, these moves have certainly been debilitating. The kind of interesting as the story emerges on both the pager attack, the walkie-talkie attack, and then the subsequent assassinations going after the headquarters there in Beirut. It it seems that this wasn't so much part of a wider strategy as kind of long targets of opportunity. They had been targets of opportunity for a while, but now seemed like the right opportunity combined. But the real kicker here, I think, and this is why everyone is obviously on the edge of their seat. The invasion part, the incursion part was the really controversial part.
Yeah.
The Netanyahu's generals had argued vociferously for it back in October, were perhaps less confident now, but but did push for an incursion using just special operations forces. But to
And
your point, at
this
some point they
happened.
have to withdraw, right?
I mean, yeah, this happened in what, 1983, and then again in 2006, if I
82,
recall
yeah.
right.
Yep. Yeah, this will be the third Lebanon war. Um, and of course, Israel has a a very painful legacy from the 82 through 2001, 2002 invasion. It was kind of their Vietnam, and it was the first time Israel was shown in the role of Goliath rather than David. But anyway, I'm sorry, a lot. But my point is, uh, yeah, I agree with you 100%. And the real sensitive part is the withdrawal, right? What happens after you, because you either stay there and occupy, or you withdraw these guys. And that is what is left behind is going to be the tough part. The Israelis they don't believe in clear and hold and build the way we do. They they clear and they clear, they hold briefly, and they rely on other people to come in and build afterwards. And that, I think, is the opportunity for, I hate to say international community, but it really is. To your point, Hezbollah's hold on Lebanon has been weakened significantly for the first time, perhaps in a couple of decades. This would perhaps be the time to finally enforce, UN resolution 170, what is it,
Oh, one, I
1701?
think.
Yeah, finally, right? And for the UN and for the Lebanese government to kind of get a grip, and move ahead as an independent sovereign entity free of Hezbollah. This sounds naive, but my point is, this is the only opportunity, the greatest opportunity Lebanon, the international community has had, and Israel's not going to follow. Israel's not going to build this. We, U.S. international community, should be ready to. Otherwise, it's the third Lebanon war, and there's going to be a fourth and a fifth and a sixth.
Yeah, unfortunately, my view at the moment leans towards the latter option that, like I said, this isn't the end, it's the beginning.
And we haven't even talked about the relatives of the 40,000 or so casualties in Gaza. That's the one thing that we sometimes forget. We don't factor in counterinsurgency, is that we're not dealing with statistics, we're dealing with human beings. And for every dead person who is a family member, there are waves of anger and retribution. We mirror image in other ways, but we don't mirror image our enemy or the civilian population in that way, and realize the depth of anger that we are creating. I say we, because we've done this,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, no, people get upset sometimes when I point it out. It's a controversial issue. I get it. But what has happened in Gaza over the last year is going to haunt Israel for the rest of its days. I think. I don't think there's any. They've moved a corner. They went around a corner in several different ways. I mean, what happened on October 7th shattered Israel's sense of security, maybe forever. And then the response in Gaza, and that's something that's going to haunt Israel for a very long time.
Yeah, certainly. I think it's changed Israelis' perception of themselves. It's undermined. There was always there's always this feeling of kind of the plucky nation, right, with right on their
Right. Yeah, the
side.
underdog.
Yeah, and I think in the eyes of the number of Israelis, that's been tested, but it doesn't matter that it's been tested, because fear has caused them, the whole country, to
Yep.
really solidify on this base that is, to the outside world, rather alarming, right? Because it looks pretty extreme, and it certainly obviates any potential for a two-state solution. The way that the
Yeah. We,
Israeli,
we've never
the
been further away from that than
yeah,
now.
I think the whole topic of normalization in the Middle East between Israel and Arab countries, period, has been fractured. It was looking pretty good for a while there a few years ago, but I think this might have started to cause some cracks. I mean, I could be wrong on that, but that's what it seems.
Well, that's one of the arguments, right? That the Iranians wanted October 7 to happen in order to spike the normalization of relations between Israel and Saudi Arabia. And Saudi Arabia, of course, being Sunni, Iran being Shia,
Mhm.
that's like the Cold War of the Middle East, right? That
Yeah,
those two nations are kind of pitted against one another.
yeah.
I mean, to be sure, and to be very clear for everyone, no crocodile tears for Hezbollah or, Nasrallah. I mean, yes, I mean, we're all delighted that the organization is on the ropes. The question here is it part of a bigger strategy? And if not, then Hezbollah will return and will return probably stronger than before, because that's you look through the site, it doesn't matter who's been leading Hezbollah, that is what has happened in the past.
Yeah, what a mess.
On that note, though, what's going on? Oh yeah, I was going to say from what a mess to on that note, what's going on in your life, Jack? That um, I do want to say that because I think that our audience doesn't get enough of you. In fact, a lot of our unfan mail, beyond, hey, why are you guys on? We want to see less of you. Is we want to see more of Jack, which, to be
I
frank
don't think
with
you
you, is
get
why
those
you're on now.
emails. I think that's a lie. Uh,
He gets them. He very
but hey, I just got back last week from a trip to Kyrgyzstan and Kazakhstan. That was really fun. I was over
I
there
saw that.
hiking, horseback riding, cruising around Bishkek and Almaty. It was a real eye-opening trip, a lot of fun. Like I'd love to go back. I'm actually hoping to go back this
Wait,
summer.
you went to Kyrgyzstan on vacation?
Yeah, basically. I mean, my girlfriend is from there, so I mean, I
Ah,
had a
okay.
pretty squared away tour guide.
Yeah,
Um,
okay. Enough said.
yeah.
Excellent. Do you try the horse's milk, or is that just
Yeah, I drank
Mongolia?
the fermented horse milk. It was awesome. Partook in the manly sports of horseback riding in the mountains. Yeah, all of that.
Nice.
Bare-chested. So anyway, welcome back from that.
Yeah,
What are you working
thanks.
on now?
And well, let's see. Where I've been reading this new book, David
Oh,
McCloskey's new spy novel, The Seventh Floor. We're gonna have him on the Team House, not this week, I think next week. We have him coming up. Um, Interesting guy. He was a CIA analyst. And oh, and then the other thing too.
so hey, so that book is it's a novel, Jack? The Seventh
Yeah,
Floor?
it's a novel. Mikulski was a CIA analyst, and he's written three spy novels: Damascus Station, Moscow X, and this new one that just came out, The Seventh Floor. Um, I wasn't a huge fan of Damascus Station; didn't really do it for me. But I did. I really enjoyed Moscow X. That was a cool novel. And The Seventh Floor is a counterintelligence story. It's a mole hunt. And I've been enjoying it so far.
So
Pick it
what
up.
about the agency? How, Jason, are these books? I mean, are they well acclaimed within the agency,
Honestly,
or
I
are they
have
like?
to I have to check them out. I haven't. I've heard of McCluskey, but I haven't read the book. So, but I'm sure if it made it to the past publication review, that you know
Do
that
they
it's
have to do that even for fiction?
yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because you can
Yeah.
still insert methods and procedures in there, under the guise of fiction. So yeah, it still has to go through.
It
No,
took
it's
mine.
a very good book. The Moscow X was incredible.
Yeah.
Nice. Now,
Yeah,
Um,
Andy,
that whole review process took 9 months for my book.
I was going to say, I was going to
Like,
ask you how long yours took.
yeah, yeah, good. It was I can say that it was bogged down by the Intel community for a long
yeah.
period of
Did I
time.
was going to ask, like, did you have to just submit it to DoD or did it have to go through other agencies also?
It starts at DoD, and then it goes, and then
Okay.
so I know they sent a copy to. Anyway, it doesn't matter. They sent it to different agencies, and they sent it within DoD to Dev Group, and any
Yep.
organization that might
Yep.
have been. And so any organization can come back and say, hey, we want this to be redacted.
Right.
Um, and I was lucky. I got away with some I thought were quite minor points, but I've been careful writing the book. I thought, I wrote a lot about signals intelligence targeting, and I knew everything that I wrote, there was precedent in open source, um, which because that's the only way to do this, right? There's no, you don't want to be ice breaking when it comes to releasing information. So I'd look at, okay, can I write about that? And I'd find somewhere where it was written about, which was laborious, but it got me through the final check. And actually, there's a huge amount out there in open source information about targeting methodology and signals intelligence. There is, I think most people would agree there's very little you cannot learn from open source intelligence.
I have a friend of mine who's written novels, and he had to submit to both DoD and CIA, and they ended up basically killing his series.
Wow.
Because both DoD and CIA wanted the first look, and he's like, I can't give both agencies the first look. That's not possible. It was like basically they found a bureaucratic way to stop him from writing.
Yeah. God. Now, Jack, with your books, did you have to go through a review or?
No, I didn't put any of my books through a review. I put an article I wrote through DoD review once. I'll never do it again.
Yeah.
It was it's absolutely a political process.
Yeah.
And I had a lawyer going to them. I mean, it was bizarre because I'm showing them point by point, like, how is it that you cleared this information here in this publication,
Yeah.
but suddenly it's reclassified again when I'm
Yeah.
writing the exact same thing? Like it's politics.
Absolutely.
It's not about safeguarding
That's
information.
exactly it. It becomes for its critics, it becomes de facto censorship.
Yeah.
And what Jack's talking about it is something that has been kind of validated by a series of lawsuits against DoD, where authors have said, "How come you blocked me for this, but now you released it here?" And there certainly is a perception that if you are being critical of DoD in your book, you're going to get a much harder ride when it comes to getting cleared for security.
And the article I submitted was very pro US Army. It was like, good job, boys. You done well.
That's why it made people suspicious, Jack.
um, and what else was I gonna say on that though? But yeah, the review process is bullshit.
Yeah.
So you're about to show us a book in the background.
Oh yeah. So the other thing I've started working on, it's in the nascent phases, is I haven't read any of these books yet. But these are books about the military liaison mission in Berlin during the Cold War. These ones too. Duh, duh, duh. So this is my like fall winter reading that I got to get on. So the military liaison mission was under like I think it was under the Four Powers agreement that governed Berlin after the end of World War II. The way Germany was chopped up was that, American, French, and British military liaisons in uniform in an official vehicle could go and drive into communist held East Germany. And the Soviets could do the same. They could come over to our side and do the same. Just sort of like as like an inspection to make sure everyone's following the rules, basically. But those openings were used for all manner of espionage by both sides. And I've been talking to some of the special forces guys who are assigned to the military liaison mission, and there are some epic, epic stories that I don't think have ever been written about before that I'm looking forward to chronicling. A lot of stuff like stealing Soviet military technology and then reverse engineering it, putting guys up across the border and getting pictures of tactical ballistic missiles that weren't supposed to be there. Dudes actually like getting up under the tarp and crawling into the brand new T-72 tanks and taking like in there taking pictures, like just really cool stuff. So that's something I'm working on right now.
I guess a lot of that was probably it buried, I don't know if it was classification levels at the time, but it's kind of also eclipsed by what was going on in Vietnam. But I mean, the stories you've been recounting and researching have been really fascinating. I mean,
Yeah.
who knew? Because I always thought the Cold War must have been a really boring time. I mean, it was a boring time. I was there. Thank you for about being about to remind me, Jack. It was so toilet papers chained to the wall. But it was generally a very boring time in the military. So whenever I see Cold War, Cold War, whatever, except for Cold War Spy, obviously those books are interesting. Cold War Warrior, I'm like, how boring. But you bring up a like a genre that's not well known, but
Yeah,
kind of at the core of our ethos, right?
I mean,
Oh
the
shit. No.
probably the reason why I'm still doing this job, like what have I been working this for like 12 years or something like that, 13 years, is I mean, there's always something new to learn. There's always something interesting and surprising. And like the article I was complaining about that I submitted to DoD review, that was about Special Forces Detachment A in Berlin.
Hmm.
And I wrote that and I was like, okay, I unraveled the mystery. And then suddenly the MLE thing lands in your lap, and it's like, oh shit, there's all this other stuff going on. There's always more and more.
What's
My
the MLA stuff?
I wrote a book that's coming out in December that's going to have a huge amount of special forces history that's never been published before. And one chapter is Detachment A. Another chapter is about Detachment K in Korea. And then Blue Light, Green Light, and then the Commander's in Extremis Force. And I just added like 5 more pages to the manuscript
Nice.
about the creation of C37, which was 7th Group's SIF team down in Panama. And there's a whole epic story about how they got stood up and did some chicanery to get the facilities and weapons that they needed to do that job. Pretty cool. So yeah, I ended up
This
just
was
just
for
this.
Just Cause.
This was before Just Cause, so
Just
this
Cause.
would have been
88,
19. So the tasking for C37, I believe, came
87.
in 77, and
So
I
yeah,
think they
right.
finally got it up and running in 1980. They
Yeah.
got like a year extension to get that going. So like all of this stuff is happening in tandem with the creation of Delta Force and these other counterterrorism capabilities. They're trying to stand these elements up at the same time.
What are they using as their model?
Well, yeah, that's interesting. So Charlie Beckwith absolutely was using the SAS as the model for Delta Force. Hence why they have squadrons and troops and so on. Um, when when they stood up C37, Colonel Chuck Fry, who was the battalion commander of 3rd Battalion, 7th Special Forces Group at the time, he called up Charlie, who he had served with in Vietnam, and asked, "Hey, do you have any lessons learned, like best practices, as I stand up this counterterrorism element in 7th Group?" And Colonel Fry reports that Charlie told him, "Fuck off, Fry," and like hung up the phone. That was that.
So
So
and so it began there, right?
yeah, so a lot of the special forces counterterrorism capabilities came out of the blue light experience, 1977, 78. They had their own interim counterterrorism force called Blue Light at Mott Lake in Fort Bragg. And a lot of those lessons learned after blue light was deactivated, those lessons learned were kind of retained out at Mott Lake
Who who were who were
at a
the
new
blue light
force.
guys, Jack? Were they drawn from special forces?
Yeah, they were all 5th Group guys. And almost all of the NCOs were Vietnam veterans. They were like MACV SOG guys, Sunte Raiders. A lot of them had served in the projects, Sigma and Omega and so forth. These were very seasoned guys. And then the lessons learned, the TTPs they developed, got retained in special operations training, which was a course that was run into the like late 1990s, actually, out at Mott Lake. Um, and then the next iteration of all of this comes around later on in the 1980s when the SIF concept is becoming more formalized, and they stood up Sephardic as a course to qualify SIF team members. And in order to do that, and the way the SIF mission was structured to augment Delta Force in real life operations as an in extremis force, they had to harmonize the TTPs, right? They had to be on the same sheet of music. So there was a whole process where Sephardic and Phil Hansen, who was a former Delta Force member who helped stand up Sephardic, was a big part of that. And they had to go through all the binders and everything and basically take all the Delta Force stuff and condense it down to just what the SIF guys needed to know to execute their mission, the in extremis mission. And so that was sort of the next iteration that formalized it. And I think the first Sephardic course was probably ran in 1987. And then I think it got renamed as Sephardic and became more formalized in 1988, as I recall.
Jack, let me ask you something about, because I know that your relationship with with the army, but more specifically with special forces and probably the Ranger Regiment, probably similar to mine in the Marine Corps, except the Marines just seem to have a much greater hold, and I was in the military about 60 years longer than you. But aside from that, it's kind of that pride at having been part of the institution, pride in their history, but at the same time, also a determination to be absolutely blunt about the shortfalls in the organization that you love. And as an admirer of Green Berets, I can also say though that just like the Marine Corps, they're a victim of their own legends sometimes. And when it comes to, and I'll give you an example, when it comes to unconventional warfare, oh my God, that doctrine became almost a religion, and yet they just didn't. You had all the doctrinaires, and they only Army SF can do this. Meanwhile, in the real world, this shit was going on, counter ISIS.
Right.
But it was Marines and sailors and Air Force as well as Army guys doing this shit, not just Green Berets working out how to do all that stuff, working with the resistance in Mosul. Army doctrine didn't change one fucking iota. It didn't even ask for input from that, you know, because who are these non-cognoscenti? They're not part of the UW, and so the doctrine went on talking about auxiliaries and blah blah blah. That, I mean, have you come across that? Do you think that special forces are indeed changing fast enough to adapt to what's going on? I mean, the
Yeah,
legends are great.
I mean, that's a tough question to answer. And also I'm not quite current. I left the army like 15 years ago. But what I do know is that Special Forces has been conducting some experiments essentially about, you know, messing around with their task organization of the ODA, the basic maneuver element of Special Forces. And there's all kinds of different thoughts, and I'd have to look and see where exactly they're at with it. But they're looking to have, like, maybe an electronic warfare guy on the team, to have maybe a drone guy on the team, maybe cyber, to kind of like have these elements
Yeah.
as being organic to the ODA structure, and bumping the teams up from 12 guys to 16. That's something else they've looked at. I've even heard some stories about how like they want to have a Space Force guy on the team, which I think is ridiculous and will never happen. Maybe you'll have a
Stop.
Space Force guy up at group level. Um, but they are looking at these things, and it's interesting. I mean, a lot of something that was really influential on me, was science fiction, honestly. And I mean, I have tattoos on me of the film Ghost in the Shell, which in this film, it's a clandestine unit that does direct action, disinformation, cyber warfare. And now it seems it took, till about today, for the Army and special operations to come to the conclusion that we should have these blended capabilities in one team. So it's interesting to see that starting to come about.
Yeah, it's I I asked that question, being equally critical, by the way, of the Marine Corps. But it, it is, yeah, holding on to our traditions, holding on to the legends of the past are all hugely positive. Um, and until now, it's been positive as far as projecting the ethos for the future. But I'll just give you an example. I mean, the Marine Corps. the Marine Corps is grappling with, hey, we need to really bring in a lot. We need to bring in more guys who are, cyber oriented, EW oriented. We need way more of these guys than we do with the guy who can carry a 60-pound pack, and strangle someone with a length of cheese wire. And that is, that's the image of the new Marine Corps. But it's not the image of the Marine Corps, so how do you reconcile all of this? I imagine Army SF's wrestling with some of the same stuff.
Yeah, I mean the military, I mean it's like as you know, I mean the military is what it is, and like as an animal, it's only so malleable. It's only going to change so
Yeah.
much, and there's still, I mean, there's still this sort of like vestigial aspects of military tradition that come about, when you had illiterate draftees. We're not really there as a country anymore. You have, people with high school degrees, if not college degrees. We're just in a different culture, and all this like standing around in formation and haircuts and it's kind of keeps people in an infantile state, I think, when I look back on it now. And I mean, of course, there needs to be adult supervision. But
Yeah.
some of
Well,
that
that's
stuff,
that's uh that's why it's called the infantry.
yeah, yeah. I mean, and so, but I mean, at the same time, I mean, look, that organization, like I said, is only going to change so much. We have to be
Yeah.
realistic about that.
Yeah, I mean, certainly there's the requirement for kind of mass warfare does not go away. Absolutely. And yet even that requirement for mass warfare becomes increasingly technical as the
Well,
Ukrainians are,
well,
are
that's
discovering.
the fear, that we have these like legacy capabilities, like mass tack, static line parachuting, and a lot of people say we'll never do that again. We'll never use that again. But it's one
What
of
are you
those
talking
things
about?
that
Blasphemy.
you get rid of it, and 6 months later you're going to need it. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
there's always those feelings lingering.
So I got to ask you something about totally unrelated, but I know we're coming to the end of your very valuable time, and you've got to leave us to sign autographs and take care of your hair.
8 by 11
I
glossy photographs. Yeah.
but but I'm intrigued by the drive you have as an investigative journalist. One thing you know one point where you have been absolutely, I use a cliche, laser focused, has been kind of uncovering hypocrisy. And I admire that. All right. And I hate telling you I admire anything. But I do. But I do. But can you talk a little bit about that? I mean, hypocrisy. I know you've gone. There have been some. We talked about the high profile officer cases, but it was never. The feeling I got was it's never personal. It was just position people in positions of authority and hypocrisy.
Yeah, people abusing positions of authority. Yeah, I mean, so from like the army's perspective, someone like me is a double-edged sword, right? There are some people who feel that I can be an asset to special forces because I write this stuff. I write these histories. There are some people who, I mean, I've been called a cancer. I've been called the TMZ of special operations,
Jesus.
all sorts of things. So there are
That's a
some
good one.
people out there who are not huge fans of your pal Jack. And that's just the name of the game. I mean, I sometimes write, like you said, expose, some bad actors in the ranks and expose some dirty laundry that's getting, swept under the carpet. And when you do that about a closed off, insular group of people who are not used to outside criticism, naturally there's going to be some pushback from that.
Is
And
there is there a case is there something, an example you can talk about where that's happened in
I
broad
mean,
terms?
yeah, there are many. I mean, yeah, there's quite a few out there, and I mean, it's the form it takes. Well, I mean, it goes all the way from I had one person threaten to kill my daughter, and they'll threaten to come after your family. Then there
Oh,
are
crap.
other times where people threaten to come after you legally. And I have not been sued to this day. But that's the go-to. Everyone threatens it, right off the bat. Um, And then yeah, but I mean it's interesting because I maintain a foot in both of these worlds, and there are former colleagues and teammates who I don't think would associate with me at this point. But there are others who do, and there's a lot of support for what I do out there as well, and all of that is just comes with the territory, you know.
So what
Yeah.
next, Jack? I'm sorry. Go ahead, Jason.
No, no, I was just going to say it would probably be less so if you didn't have one foot in their world.
Yeah,
Like if you were
exactly.
just an outsider trying to work your
Yeah.
way in, they probably would just like, pardon my language, but like just fuck off. Whereas with now, because you know, they can say certain things and you're like, yeah, that's bullshit, because you know. So
Yeah, that drives some people nuts. And it's funny the way they always want to like relitigate my military career. It's like,
yeah,
man, that it's like going
So
back
nice.
in time and relitigating your little league games at this
yeah,
point. Like
yeah.
I'm a little, long in the tooth.
Well,
It's a but that's because they assume that I'm like them and that
mm,
the military is my thing, and my time in the army is this like the only thing I have going on in my life. And it's an important part of my life, but it's also quite a ways in the rearview mirror at this point. And I enjoy what I do today and I like it. But you're right, Jason. Yeah, if I wasn't, sort of a quote unquote insider, the response would have been maybe a little bit different.
yeah.
I think a good validation of that is the fact is just a comparison between reaction towards you and say Sean Naylor, right? Sean created, I mean, when he came out with Relentless Strike, it created furor.
Yeah.
But when it all came down to it, there wasn't a lot. No, I know when I heard military guys talk about Sean, it was like, yeah, fucking journal. But that was a good book though. I mean, it was, but it was kind of okay, that's what we expect. He's a journo. He's a journo. He's kind of the enemy, but there was a sneaking respect. And of course, they have a more than a sneaking respect for you, Jack. But with you, when you say something, and I imagine to a lesser extent, far lesser, me too, it hits something visceral in people wearing uniform because it looks like a betrayal, right?
Yeah.
You are violating omerta. You're criticizing Cosa Nostra publicly, and that makes you a particular type of villain. It's rather
Hey,
it's rather
everyone has
sinister.
some claim to fame out there. Mine may be that I'm the most controversial former Green Beret.
There's in fairness, there's a couple more, and actually one or two in jail right now who are in running for that title, Jack.
It's a tight race.
All right. Okay, so as we draw to a close, with our whole hierarchy, chain of command, team house, and eyes on here, I'm going to let you guys close this with however you want to, and I'm simply going to sign off and say this was a delightful conversation and very nice again to see you all and to be able to talk to our audience.
So it's just completely unrelated, but you're just talking about TMZ, Jack. We're talking since they do their what is it, their celebrity spottings. Our good buddy Victor Bout, the arms dealer,
Yeah.
he so apparently the Houthis sent some emissaries to Moscow to broker it was like $10 million arms deal. It was supposed to be for like automatic weapons, and who met them but Bout. So he's back on the market.
Yeah.
So his apparently his attorney, I didn't know he was a New York based guy. His attorney declined to comment. Moscow won't comment and the Houthis won't comment, but apparently there's video and pictures of it.
That's got to drive CIA up the fucking
Oh
wall.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Jack's book's coming out December 9th. Check it out. It's We
Yep.
Defy. The link will be in the description. You can pre-order it right now. Of course, Andy's book, When the Tempest Gathers, also in the description. Really good books. Jack, we're gonna do an audio book, right? Once you lock in the freaking manuscript.
I think the that Amazon has like AI loaded into it or something like that that will do
Do an
speech to
audio.
or text to speech. Yeah.
Okay, cool,
I think
cool.
they can do it automatically. Um, but yeah, I kind of finished the manuscript yesterday. There's a great forward from former Secretary of Defense Chris Miller in the book, and now I just got to format the paperback edition. So people keep asking me, is there going to be a hard copy? And yeah, there is. I just can't set up pre-orders on Amazon. They won't let you do it for the paperback for some reason. I
So
don't
ridiculous. It
understand.
makes no sense why they don't do
Yeah,
that.
I don't
But
get it. I don't get it.
what's really cool though is they're releasing the paperback same time as hardback, right?
No, it's just paperback. There's not going to be a
Oh, cool.
hardback. Yeah. Um, so but that will, the paperback will be for sale on December 9th on the release date.
Yeah. So check it out. The link is in the
That's
description.
exciting.
Very exciting. It's a good,
Yeah,
solid.
I'm stoked to finally get it out. And there may be a volume two. We'll see how things go.
What can people do to help support the show, both the Team House and Eyes On? They can go to patreon.com/the Team House. The link is in the description. You get ad-free audio and video, some bonus content, things of that, and early access to the Eyes On episodes and stuff like that, because I put them out early. So on Patreon. So help the show out. Excuse me, help the show out. I got emotional. Uh YouTube is crushing our souls. Jack can attest to that.
Yes.
They're not playing ball and we're not happy with it, but YouTube's a big part of our show. So patreon.com/the team house, please.
Yeah. Thank you guys.
Thank you.